I'm a 19-year-old university student who pays for everything myself. No family support, just me working hard to make ends meet while studying. For almost a year, I worked at this small pizza place in my neighborhood. It was a cozy little joint where you only needed about 4 people to run the place on a busy night. I was the pizza chef, and I loved my job. Everything changed when the original owner decided to sell the business. During the transition, I was asked to train the new owners on everything: making pizzas, packing orders, using the order system, health and safety protocols, and even customer service. I put in extra hours to make sure they understood everything. We seemed to get along great during this phase. They were friendly, even offering me rides home on rainy nights after late shifts. We'd chat about our families, friends, and hobbies. I genuinely thought we had a good rapport. Then, during their first week of official ownership, I got tonsillitis and had to call in sick. That's when everything flipped upside down. When I returned to work, their attitude toward me had completely changed. They were cold, dismissive, and started cutting my shifts. Before they took over, they had promised I'd be learning how to make pasta dishes in addition to pizzas, but suddenly that opportunity vanished. What bothered me most was their complete disregard for health and safety rules. They worked without hairnets, didn't wash their hands properly, and ignored other basic protocols. One day, I noticed a coworker with extremely long hair working without a hairnet. Her hair was in a braid that reached down to her waist, completely exposed. I told her that she needed to wear a hairnet, explaining that it was part of our occupational health and safety rules. I warned her that if someone found hair in their food, the restaurant could get in serious trouble. She simply refused, saying she didn't need to wear one. I looked at one of the new owners who was standing right there, expecting some support, but instead, the owner sided with her and told me to leave her alone. About 10 minutes later, I found a bowl of hair exactly where I make pizzas. I picked it up and showed it to both of them. I pointed out that this was exactly why we needed hairnets, and that I had found it right where I was preparing food. The coworker reluctantly put on a hairnet, but left her long braid hanging out, completely defeating the purpose. The owner said nothing about this half-hearted compliance. The following week, another incident happened. A co-worker wanted a day off and I was hoping for an extra shift. It seemed like a perfect swap. I suggested that since the next day was Tuesday and usually slow, I could take his shift. I added that it would be a good opportunity for me to learn how to make pasta dishes like we had discussed earlier. The owner flatly refused, simply stating they wanted him to work, not me. No explanation was given beyond that. About a month later, I went on a pre-approved 2-week holiday to the US. They had known about this trip for months and had given me the time off. But when I returned and asked about my schedule, I got the shock of my life. The owner told me that they didn't need me anymore. When I asked what I had done wrong, they accused me of being rude to coworkers, being racist, refusing to work in the kitchen, and messing up paperwork. I was stunned. In the 9 months I worked under the previous owner, I never had a single complaint. I got along with everyone. I literally worked as a chef in the kitchen, and the only paperwork I ever filled out was my employee form. I texted my former coworkers to ask if I had ever been rude or racist toward them. They all responded saying of course not, and that we had always gotten along fine. When I tried to call the owners back to discuss this, they hung up on me and then sent me abusive text messages, doubling down on their accusations of racism. When I responded to defend myself, they threatened to get lawyers involved if I contacted them again. I was hurt, confused, and angry. But that's when I remembered something important. During my time there, I had witnessed some questionable financial practices. They often paid staff in cash to avoid taxes. They hadn't paid my retirement fund contributions as required by law, and they weren't paying their staff fairly according to our labor laws. So I called the Australian Taxation Office. I reported everything I had seen: the cash payments, the missing retirement contributions, the unfair wages. The person on the phone seemed very interested in this information. They told me that what I had shared was more than enough for them to start an investigation, and that it would most likely result in a full audit of the business. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a former coworker. They excitedly told me the tax inspectors had shown up unannounced that day. The inspectors had gone through all the financial records and questioned everyone about how they were paid. My former coworker said the owners were completely panicking. A month after that, I heard they had been hit with massive fines and back taxes. They're struggling to keep the business afloat now. I personally found an amazing new job at another restaurant, and I've never had a single complaint about my behavior or work ethic. At 72, my legs aren't what they used to be, and my walker helps me get around these days. But I don't mind. Life has its challenges, but also its joys. Like my grandson. That boy is the light of my life. Ever since my daughter passed away 3 years ago, I've been trying my best to help my son-in-law raise him. It hasn't been easy on any of us, but we're making it work. My grandson rarely asks for anything, which is why when he mentioned wanting this new video game, something about exploring space and building worlds, I decided to surprise him. I've been saving up for 2 months. My pension only stretches so far, but seeing his face light up would be worth every penny. The game wasn't cheap, $69.99 plus tax, but his birthday was coming up and I wanted to make it special. So there I was, shuffling through the electronics store with my walker, the glossy game box safely tucked in the little basket attached to it. I was almost at the checkout when I heard them. A woman in sunglasses pushed past me, dragging a boy about my grandson's age behind her. The boy looked embarrassed as she loudly commented to her son that I was being selfish by not buying a game for him too. She made it sound like I was somehow obligated to purchase video games for random children I encountered while shopping. I thought she was joking at first. Surely no one would seriously expect a complete stranger to buy their child a gift. But when I looked at her face, there wasn't a hint of humor there. I politely explained that the game was for my grandson and that I couldn't possibly buy games for everyone I met. She responded with indignation, insisting that my explanation wasn't good enough and that I should buy one for her child too. Her tone suggested I was being unreasonable for refusing. I tried to be patient. Maybe she was having a rough day. I gently repeated that I couldn't afford to buy games for everyone and that this game was specifically for my grandson to make him happy. Her face twisted into an ugly sneer as she insulted me, claiming that old people like me only think of ourselves and never consider others. Her generalization stung deeply. That hurt. I spent my whole life thinking of others, working 2 jobs to support my family, volunteering at the community center until my health declined, always trying to be kind to strangers. And here was this woman judging my entire generation based on what? My unwillingness to spend $70 on her child? I decided to walk away. No good would come from arguing with someone so unreasonable. But as I turned, I heard the boy speak up. The boy asked his mother why she was being so mean to an old man who was just trying to buy a present for his grandson. His words showed more maturity than his mother's behavior. Smart kid. Shame about his mother. I continued toward the checkout, but I could hear her heels clicking on the tile floor behind me. She called after me, demanding I not walk away while she was talking to me. Her voice echoed through the store, drawing unwanted attention. The cashier, a young man with bright blue hair, looked concerned as I approached. He asked if everything was okay. I simply told him I was trying to buy the game for my grandson, attempting to downplay the situation. Karen interrupted loudly, accusing me of being selfish and flaunting my wealth while there were children who couldn't afford these games. Her accusation was as ridiculous as it was loud. I almost laughed. Wealth? If only she knew how I'd been counting pennies to afford this. The cashier looked uncomfortable but rang up my purchase. I paid with exact change. Bills and coins I'd carefully counted out at home before leaving. The cashier politely asked if I wanted a bag for my purchase. I declined his offer, explaining that I would just put it in my walker basket where it would be secure. As I took the receipt and tucked the game into my basket, I felt something brush against me. Before I could react, Karen had snatched the game box. She declared that her son deserved the game more than my spoiled grandson as she grabbed it from my basket. The entitlement in her voice was shocking. She turned and ran toward the exit, her high heels somehow not slowing her down. I called out for her to stop protesting that the game was mine. I tried to follow, but my walker and old legs weren't made for chasing thieves. I felt helpless and angry all at once, but then the cashier vaulted over the counter. He called back to me that he would handle it as he sprinted past. He sprinted past me and out the door. Through the store windows, I could see him chasing her across the parking lot. She was fast, but he was faster. He caught up to her between two parked cars, tackled her to the ground, and wrestled the game from her hands. By the time I made it outside, a small crowd had gathered. The security guard had arrived and was helping restrain Karen, who was screaming about assault and threatening lawsuits. The cashier returned the game to me, apologizing for what had happened. The game was slightly dented but otherwise intact. I thanked him profusely, admitting I didn't know what I would have done without his help. My gratitude was genuine and heartfelt. He modestly brushed off my thanks and told me that they'd called the police, who were on their way to deal with the situation. Karen suddenly changed her tone, pleading with me to tell everyone it was just a misunderstanding. The desperation in her voice showed she finally realized the seriousness of her actions. She was looking at me, suddenly desperate. The reality of her situation was sinking in. I challenged her claim, pointing out that stealing from me and running away was not something that could be dismissed as a misunderstanding. The police arrived minutes later. They took statements from everyone, and I watched as they put Karen in handcuffs and into the back of a patrol car. Her son was crying now, and I felt bad for him. The officer explained they would need to keep the game as evidence for now, but assured me I would get it back after she was processed. I expressed my concern, mentioning it was for my grandson's birthday, which was coming up soon. The disappointment in my voice must have been clear. The cashier stepped forward with a solution. He offered that they had another copy in the back which he could ring up with the store covering the cost. He added that they could provide the receipt to the police for their case. The manager quickly agreed, apologizing for what had happened to me in their store. Their concern seemed genuine. I was touched by their kindness. When they processed a new copy for me, the police officer explained that Karen would be charged with theft and possibly assault. He mentioned they'd had complaints about her before, always demanding special treatment and threatening shop owners, though this was the first time she'd actually stolen something. His casual tone suggested this wasn't entirely surprising to law enforcement. I nodded, surprised but not shocked. Some people go through life thinking the world owes them everything. When I finally got home, I was exhausted but relieved. I wrapped the game and kept it hidden until my grandson's birthday the following week. When he opened it, his eyes lit up just as I'd imagined. My grandson exclaimed with excitement, repeatedly thanking me while asking how I knew he wanted that specific game. His joy was evident as he hugged me tightly, and his hug made everything, the confrontation, the theft, the police report, worth it. When I started my first year at university in Western England, I was excited about the independence. Living in a massive Georgian house with 22 other guys seemed like it would be a blast. The building had character, high ceilings, creaky floors, and 3 shared kitchens spread across different floors. I thought sharing would be fine. I'm a bit of a foodie and always made sure to budget for some decent groceries, including a nice block of aged cheddar I'd treat myself to each week. At first, I didn't notice anything amiss, but soon realized my food was disappearing at an alarming rate, especially my cheese. I'd buy a block on Monday, and by Wednesday, half would be gone. I tried labeling everything. I tried leaving passive-aggressive notes. I even tried hiding my food in different parts of the fridge. Nothing worked. The food thieves were relentless. I asked everyone if they had seen my clearly labeled cheese. One housemate claimed he hadn't seen it at all, while another suggested I check the other kitchens. But I knew better. I'd seen these 2 particular housemates, both second years who thought they owned the place, snickering when I complained. I caught them once with crumbs of what looked suspiciously like my cheese on a plate, but they denied everything. When I confronted them, one of them mockingly asked what I was going to do about it, saying it was just cheese. It wasn't just about the cheese anymore, it was about respect. Then came my microbiology class. We were working with a relatively harmless orthopox virus. Think of it as a distant, much milder cousin of cowpox. Our professor assured us it was safe enough for first-year students to handle with basic protection, masks, gloves, and safety glasses. During one of our lab sessions, I noticed my lab partner had developed a small blister on her lip. She hadn't been using proper sterile technique with her inoculating loop, heating it too quickly and creating an aerosol. Nothing serious, just a small annoying blister that would clear up in a few days. That's when the idea struck me. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I was at my wit's end. After class, I carefully collected a small sample of the virus. That evening, I added it to a fresh block of cheese, clearly labeled with my name, and placed it in the communal fridge. 2 days later, both of my suspected cheese thieves were sporting suspicious blisters around their mouths. Nothing dangerous, just uncomfortable enough to keep them from going to the clubs that weekend. I overheard one of them complaining that his lip was killing him and he couldn't even smile without pain. The other agreed and wondered if it was from a questionable kebab they had eaten. They were suspicious of me, of course. I could tell by the way they eyed me across the common room. To dispel their suspicions, I made a dramatic show of preparing some cheese on toast using the same block of cheese. I offered some to anyone who wanted it, adding that there was plenty to go around if they asked first. Both looked horrified watching me eat the toast with no ill effects. What they didn't know was that I was careful not to cross-contaminate, and the heat from toasting had denatured any virus present in the cheese I was eating. One of them asked how I wasn't sick. I casually replied that it was my cheese. I knew where it had been. The incident spread through the house as a mystery illness, with whispers about the cursed cheese. No one ever directly accused me. They couldn't prove anything, but the message was received loud and clear. From that day forward, not a single item of my food went missing. The cheese thieves gave my fridge shelf a wide berth. Later, one of them cautiously asked if I was worried about getting sick from my food. I smugly replied that I'd never been healthier and remarked how funny it was that this happened when you only eat your own food. I realized how risky it was. I could have gotten into serious trouble if anyone had reported mysterious blisters to the university health center, and they had somehow traced it back to the microbiology lab. The virus was relatively harmless, but my actions weren't exactly ethical. But in the strange ecosystem of student housing, sometimes you have to establish boundaries in unconventional ways. I never had to resort to such measures again. Word spread quickly that my food was off limits, and I developed a reputation as someone not to be crossed. The two cheese thieves and I eventually reached an unspoken truce. They stopped taking my food, and I never mentioned their mysterious lip condition again. By the end of the year, we could even share a kitchen without incident.